May 14, 2025. In a sealed room during an extended Politburo meeting in Beijing, Jintao, the once-forgotten former general secretary, rose to speak with a rare, thunderous resolve. Even if it leads to civil war, we must raise high the banner of reform and opening up. The statement struck the room like a bolt of lightning. The hall fell silent, marking a dramatic return for a man who had once been humiliatingly removed from the 20th Party Congress. Once a loyal ally of Xi Jinping, who had now transformed into an open challenger, willing to pay any price to reclaim Deng Xiaoping's legacy of reform. This declaration was not only the climax of Hu's long, turbulent journey, but also the epicenter of a political storm engulfing Zhongnanhai. The rising star of the Communist Youth League, Jintao was born in 1942 in Anhui Province into a middle-class family. After graduating with a degree in hydraulic engineering from Tsinghua University, he quickly joined the Communist Youth League, the training ground for the future leaders of the Chinese Communist Party. His talent and calm demeanor caught the attention of Deng Xiaoping, who in 1992 chose Hu as a potential ideological successor and promoted him to the Politburo Standing Committee at the age of 49, a rare and significant leap. When Hu became General Secretary in 2002, he carried with him a vision of continuing Deng's reform and opening up policy, a prosperous, globally integrated China with political stability. Under his leadership, alongside Premier Wen Jiabao, China experienced a golden decade of economic growth exceeding 10% annually, eventually becoming the world's second-largest economy. However, Hu's power was curbed by the faction loyal to Jiang Zemin. At the 16th Party Congress in 2002, Jiang launched what was essentially a military coup, forcing Hu to allow him to remain chairman of the Central Military Commission for 2 more years. Although Jiang officially stepped down in 2004, he continued to wield influence by placing his allies in key positions, limiting Hu's ability to enact major policies outside the walls of Zhongnanhai. Known for his mild-mannered nature, Hu preferred building consensus over confrontation, a trait that, while stabilizing, led many to view him as indecisive. A fateful choice, Xi Jinping over Keqiang. In 2007, Jintao stood at a historic crossroads, choosing his successor. Keqiang, a prominent figure from the Communist Youth League faction and Hu's preferred candidate, was the initial choice. However, mounting pressure from the Jiang Zemin faction, especially after the downfall of Chen Liangyu, led to Bo Xilai, an influential princeling backed by Jiang for his role in suppressing Falun Gong, emerging as a strong contender. To thwart Jiang's scheme, Hu had to consider an alternative, Xi Jinping. According to Japanese media, during internal votes in 2007, Xi Jinping secured 90% of the vote in Shanghai and ranked highest nationwide in support from local leaders. Within the 17th Politburo Standing Committee, Xi placed 6th, ahead of Keqiang, who ranked 7th, positioning Xi to become General Secretary in 2012. Hu's decision wasn't based solely on Xi's broad support, but also on a profound personal connection: the deep ties between Jintao and Xi's father, Xi Jinping. Hu greatly respected Hu Yaobang, the former Youth League leader who had encouraged him during his political exile to Guizhou in 1985. Hu Yaobang, in turn, held Xi Jinping in high esteem, a bond that deeply influenced Jintao. At the National Day banquet in 1999, Hu respectfully toasted Xi Jinping and even leaned in to whisper something to him. In 2003, he organized a grand memorial for Xi Jinping's birthday, despite his recent passing. This deep sense of loyalty to Hu Yaobang's legacy and gratitude toward Xi Jinping led Jintao to choose Xi Jinping over Keqiang. The decision was more than political strategy. It was a hopeful gesture that Xi would uphold the reformist legacy of the Youth League faction. At the 18th Party Congress in 2012, Hu made a complete withdrawal from power, relinquishing all positions, including chairman of the Central Military Commission, handing full control to Xi. This move, likened to a warrior turning himself into a human bomb to eliminate Dong Kunrui's bunker, was meant to end Jiang Zemin's interference and pave the way for new leadership. A broken alliance and a betrayal. Jintao's support played a key role in Xi Jinping's rapid consolidation of power. Together, they moved to dismantle the Jiang Zemin faction, especially after Bo Xilai's coup attempt was exposed in 2012. The scandal erupted when Wang Lijun, Chongqing's police chief, fled to the U.S. consulate in Chengdu carrying classified documents. These revealed a plot by Bo Xilai, backed by Jiang, to overthrow Xi through the Sing Red Strike Black campaign. The collapse of Jiang's faction was a shared victory for Hu and Xi, but it also marked the beginning of their split. Once in full control, Xi launched an anti-corruption campaign, not just to purge Jiang's faction, but also to sideline the Communist Youth League faction. Hu Chunhua, a rising star and potential future leader from the Youth League, was excluded from the Politburo at the 20th Party Congress in 2022. Xi, obsessed with power and wary of potential threats if he were to step down, secretly altered the list of standing committee members. This move violated a backroom deal made at Beidaihe, where factions had agreed Hu Chunhua would become general secretary, while Xi would retire and assume the role of a senior statesman behind the scenes. To this day, the Politburo remains one member short, 24 out of 25 seats filled, symbolizing Xi's betrayal of the agreement and Hu Jintao's increasing isolation. The ultimate humiliation came when Hu Jintao was forcibly removed from the party Congress Hall in front of the world. He reached for the new leadership list, only to be blocked by Li Zhanshu and Wang Huning. The image of Hu's confused and helpless expression became a powerful symbol of the Youth League faction's downfall and Xi's absolute dominance. But this power play came at a cost. Over 720 officials, along with their families and allies, were purged in Xi's anti-corruption campaign. Many of them now view Xi as their enemy, creating an undercurrent of deep-seated resentment. Stroke and 4 heartbreaking words. In 2015, during a party meeting, Hu Jintao suffered a stroke brought on by a surge in blood pressure, triggered by an emotional moment while criticizing Jiang Zemin. He was later diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and began long-term treatment. While hospitalized, Hu tightly grasped Xi Jinping's hand, tearfully uttering 4 words. "Move forward with courage." From his hospital bed, Hu wrote a letter to former Central Committee members, outlining 12 bold proposals. These included requiring top leaders to publicly declare their assets, abolishing the office of the former General Secretary, and holding former leaders legally accountable for wrongdoing, an implicit jab at Jiang Zemin. These proposals were not merely attempts to end Jiang's lingering influence, but a broader call for systemic reform. Hu accused Jiang of fostering factionalism and undermining key policies during his 2 terms. Despite his deteriorating health, Hu insisted on documenting history accurately, famously stating, "We must speak the truth of history." This letter marked a turning point. No longer the mild-mannered figure of the past, Hu emerged as a leader willing to confront the establishment head-on to defend the ideals of reform. The return of the elders and a historic declaration of war. They say, "Fate brings enemies face to face. And when a benefactor is betrayed and becomes an adversary, the impact can be far more devastating." In May 2025, at an expanded Politburo meeting, Hu Jintao made a stunning comeback, shaking the foundations of the Chinese Communist Party with 3 explosive declarations. Factions within the party are real, and they are a good thing. With this, Hu openly acknowledged the existence of the Shanghai clique, the Zhejiang New Army, and the Communist Youth League faction, directly challenging Xi Jinping's doctrine of absolute unity, which treats all factions as political heresy. Only the Youth League faction is the loyal heart and the true force behind reform and opening up. This statement was a direct rejection of Xi's policies over the past decade, like dual circulation and common prosperity, and a bold claim that only the Youth League faction could safeguard Deng Xiaoping's reformist legacy. Even if it leads to civil war, we must raise high the banner of reform and opening up. This final line sent shudders through the hall. Everyone understood its weight. If the current path continued, the next person dragged out of the National People's Congress might be them. Some asked, could Hu Jintao, long seen as a mild-mannered leader, really speak so defiantly? But history shows the CCP has heard such words at pivotal moments. At the Lushan Conference, when Peng Dehuai criticized the Great Leap Forward in a bold letter, Mao Zedong responded, "If the PLA won't follow me, I'll return to Jinggangshan and lead the Red Army again. Essentially, he threatened civil war. At the end of the Cultural Revolution, Mao again warned, "If the revolution fails, I'll go back to the mountains and start guerrilla warfare for a second revolution." Deng Xiaoping, when Jiang Zemin leaned too far left, declared, "Whoever doesn't support reform and opening up will be removed." These were not just metaphors, they were veiled threats of internal conflict. This time, Hu's hardened stance stemmed not only from his humiliation at the 20th Party Congress or the suspicious death of Li Keqiang, but also from mounting pressure on the CCP, economic decline, rising public discontent, and growing international isolation, especially under pressure from Trump's policies. The party was cornered. Hu wasn't speaking just for himself, but for Hu Qinhua and the Youth League faction, whom he believed could rescue reform. If Xi refused to compromise, civil war was no longer just rhetoric. It was a looming possibility. Was Xi Jinping sidelined in U.S.-China negotiations? In May 2025, the U.S.-China negotiations in Geneva became a stage that revealed Xi Jinping's waning influence. According to an internal source, the Chinese delegation, led by He Lifeng, walked out after just 2 hours when the U.S. presented 3 sensitive demands: the release of Jimmy Lai in Hong Kong, a pledge of non-aggression towards Taiwan, and full cooperation in cracking down on fentanyl. These demands struck at the Chinese Communist Party's red lines, forcing He to withdraw temporarily to seek instructions from Beijing. But the real shock came with Xi Jinping's absence during the critical 72 hours of the talks. Sources report that after returning from Moscow, Xi was placed under control by Zhang Yuxia, vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, and taken to Xishan Hospital, completely cut off from the command system. During this time, a group of party elders, including Hu Jintao, Li Qiang, and members of the Politburo Standing Committee, quickly took over. They decided to concede to the U.S. on all 3 demands, albeit with conditions designed to save face. On May 12th, a joint statement was released, citing substantial progress and the reactivation of mechanisms. But behind this conciliatory facade, the negotiations laid bare Xi Jinping's diminished authority. His grip on power was no longer absolute. The elder faction, led by Hu Jintao, seized the moment to send a clear message. They were willing to compromise with the U.S. to salvage China's economy and system, even if it meant going against Xi's will. These party elders, having witnessed the fall of the Soviet Union, understand that war is a deadly gamble, not a performance. With the economy in decline, financial pressure mounting, and international isolation growing, their priority is desperate stability, even at the cost of national pride. On the other side, Xi Jinping and a younger generation, born after 1980 and shaped by the AI, advanced materials, and military-industrial sectors, believe that the U.S. is trying to suppress China's technological rise. They argue that a conflict could prove the superiority of China's political system, force internal restructuring, and crown new national heroes on the battlefield. This is no longer just a policy disagreement. It's a battle for the steering wheel between 2 generations and 2 visions for China's future. 3 scenarios for CCP. The return of Hu Jintao and the dramatic developments at the expanded Politburo meeting have outlined 3 possible futures for the Chinese Communist Party. 1. Military, civil war, and system collapse. This is the most dangerous scenario. If Xi Jinping refuses to compromise and continues to use the security apparatus and military to suppress dissent, Hu Jintao's faction, backed by party elders and reform-minded generals, may launch an internal purge. Rumors that Zhang Yuxia criticized Xi for 30 minutes during the meeting suggest a growing divide within the military. But the cost of this path would be total chaos, possibly leading to the disintegration of the CCP itself. 2. Exile and systemic breakdown. Some sources speculate that Xi might choose to flee, withdrawing from the party and establishing a government in exile abroad. Signs such as Peng Liyuan being barred from accompanying Xi and the rocket force closely monitoring him suggest that the elder faction is bracing for this outcome. However, such a government in exile would trigger an unprecedented split in modern Chinese history. Number 3. Controlled reform and gradual withdrawal. This is the most realistic scenario. Hu Jintao's Youth League faction, possibly led by Hu Chenhua, could assume power and form a transitional government. Xi might retain a symbolic role, while real authority shifts to the reformists. This leadership would restart institutional reforms, expand the private sector, and ease social tensions. Yet the biggest challenge remains: can the system regain public trust after a political storm that has shaken the CCP's very foundations? There's a popular saying in China, "The wound on your foot is from your own steps." Xi Jinping is now isolated and betrayed. Many CCP officials and their families have become his political enemies, all due to the choices he made. This may well be the fate of both Xi and the party he led. Hu Jintao, once a staunch supporter of Xi because of his loyalty to Hu Yaobang and Shi Zhongxun, has now become his fiercest challenger. From the humiliation at the 20th Party Congress to the historic declaration in 2025, Hu's journey is one of betrayal and a burning desire for reform. Whether the future brings civil war, exile, or reform, the next 90 days will decide the fate of the Chinese Communist Party. Hu Jintao, perhaps the most embattled general secretary in Zhongnanhai, will be remembered in history as the man who dared to rise up in defense of an open China. And what do you think about Hu Jintao? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.